Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur Podcast. My name is Rita M. Perez. I am your host for this episode and, well, for all the episodes on this podcast. So if you're new here, welcome. We are so glad to have you here. You're actually here at a really great time because we're right in the middle of our content creation series. This is actually episode 3. So if you want us to start at the beginning, go 2 episodes back, and then you can go on this journey of content creation. And I'm so glad that I'm able to spill all of my beans or a little bit, because again, content creation for me, it's easier for me to show you than it is to tell you, which is also why you should come with us to Summer Camp at Sea. Because while we will be working on systems and automations and things on the back end, we're also going to be creating content. And it's not necessarily creating macro content, but it's more creating micro content. But then it is also, I'm going to be taking pictures of you and B-roll of you so that you have that to add to your marketing assets, because I can't tell you how many times, especially on these past couple of FAMs this month, that people have been like, can you just come with me on all of my trips and take pictures of me? And yes, if you would love to hire me for that, I am open to doing that. I think that this is probably going to be better, like if you have a group and if you want me to go on your group and take action shots on your group. But if you want to do individual, sure. But if you're kind of like, you can't make that kind of big investment just yet, then Summer Camp at Sea is your thing. So head on over to summercampatsea.com to reserve your spot. And then also, we are really getting into crunch time now. You are procrastinating if you are not in the cruise content library just yet, because pre-sale pricing is ending, my friend. It will end on the 31st of March, 2025. And I want to make sure that you get in now, because it's April Fool's, but I'm not fooling. We are going to launch price as of that date, which still is going to be a steal of a deal when you count all the amazing benefits that you're going to get. I am planning for a launch event mid-April, so be on the lookout for signups on social media or via email so that you can be included in that as well, because I have to be a little extra. I have to do things differently when I'm going to launch something, especially when I'm going to launch something as big and impactful as the cruise content library. I can't wait. So episode 1 of the content creation series, we were really talking about your blueprint, what was going to be feasible and sustainable in terms of you creating content to support your travel business. Episode 2, we were talking about creating that content and what are some of the best practices, what are some really tangible examples, and how you can repurpose that so you can create even more content for your business. Now, this episode, I feel, is the episode or is the content that we miss in content creation, which means we're putting out content, but who are we putting content out to? Because content is not just something that you post. You have to distribute it out there. You're creating it so that people see the content, hear the content, agree with it. They create some sort of relationship with you. It is not that you're just putting content out to put content out. There's a purpose and there's a reason, but that purpose and reason is moot if you are not getting your content out to the people that are going to be most helped by your content. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. And I get fired up about this because if you've heard a little bit about my story before, you know that this is probably where I get a little pissy. I'm trying to not curse. Because I was doing all the right things. I was sending the emails. I was posting on social media. And not a lot of stuff was happening. It was kind of going out to crickets because I wasn't using this method. I wasn't distributing my content out to new people. Because it's one thing if you're reaching the same people who are in your existing audience, but on that note too, not everybody is traveling all the time, clearly. And not everyone is going to be consistently traveling. Like some people, yes, they're going to take 1 to 2 trips a year. Some people might take a trip every 5 years because they have to save up for it because they want to like really splurge when they go on travel. So because of that, you need to be reaching new people constantly. And you have to have different distribution channels to have your content go out to those people. Because again, great that you put the content out there, but if no one's seeing it, hearing it, reading it, the Charlie Brown teacher, like you've just wasted your efforts. And I do not want you to waste your efforts, especially when it comes to this, because you've already spent lots of time, probably a couple hours, either creating the initial content, repurposing the content, and for that to fall on deaf ears, no ma'am, no sir, no friend. We're not going to do that. We are going to make sure that you're being a strategic travel entrepreneur. So let's break down a little bit. I'm obviously going to give you some examples of how I grew my podcast. We're going to talk about why I think collaborations really should be your secret weapon. I think that's a very powerful way to get visibility on your content. And then also other ways that you can distribute your content for maximum visibility. So when we're talking about SEO, search engine optimization, I feel some of us probably overthink what this can be, because it can be really, really simple. Why does this matter to you? Because people are actively, always searching for some sort of travel content. Even if they're not searching for it, if they find it because you're in their feed, it's like this dopamine boost. I don't think anybody can be made not happy by seeing some travel content in their feed. So you do need to be showing up there because that's where people are going to be. Now, where you show up, this kind of goes with your blueprint, depends on who your clients are and also what makes you the happiest. I also need you to know that SEO isn't just for Google or for Bing or any other search engine. SEO, oddly enough, is going to be important for artificial intelligence now, because I have some personal chef friends who have said they are being found, like people who are searching for personal chefs in the Orlando area through an artificial intelligence like ChatGPT. That's how they're being found, because they have content out there that points the GPT to pick them and like put their name out there. I know a business coach who was also found because of ChatGPT. So this is also a really great proponent for putting that content out there, because search engines have always been picking it up. The AIs are now picking you up. But I also like to say pretty much anything that has a search box is a search engine. So, there's a search box. You probably did a search on Travel Advisor podcast, and that's how you found my podcast. There's a search bar on YouTube. YouTube is probably, I feel like it teeters back and forth with Google and YouTube, that they're both in the number 1 and number 2 search engine spots. So that is very important. There's also on social media, there is search boxes on there. So, I like Instagram and I also like LinkedIn. I might be dabbling with TikTok soon, just because we're seeing that it's gotten out of some of the drama. So I might dabble in TikTok just to see what happens there as well. But when we're talking about search engines too, so there's multiple ways that people can search for you. What's important to know about this also is that you need to stop being cutesy when it comes to naming things. So if you're trying to be cutesy when you're titling a blog post or a YouTube video or a podcast episode, we need to stop doing that. Similarly, I had this conversation a couple weeks ago with a travel advisor who wanted to create a Facebook group, and they used a cutesy title, which I love the cutesy title. But again, we have to think about search engine optimization more strategically. Somebody is not going to look up Fresh Roses Travel. Because what does Fresh Roses Travel do? Like, does Fresh Roses Travel actually get me to see fresh roses in their native land? Or is this just because you like the smell of fresh roses that you named your agency that? So that's like, this is a really great example. Like, I don't want you to name things that are not super specific. So you have to optimize any titles, any keywords, any captions, any descriptions. We need to make sure everything is written for SEO in mind. And I know that can be hard. That's where your handy dandy AI friend can come in too. Because if you select that you want to have certain keywords for a blog post that you're doing, if you tell it to write those keywords in naturally, it will. Like, I've used Claude AI for some of my blog posts, and I'm like, I don't know how you would have done that, because the old version of Rita would have written an article, then gone back in to figure out where my keywords could go in. Do you know how much time that takes? This saves me so much time if I'm able to prompt the AI to just do it automatically for me. And again, like, if you're using AI for content creation, you have to infuse your expertise into here, and you're not just copy pasting directly from AI. You are having to edit AI so that it sounds a little bit more like you. But there are ways also that you can prompt AI with as much information from you as possible, so that the output, you don't have to edit as much also. And it is mostly an original piece of work, as long as you put in a lot of effort into the front end of that. So that's my tangent about using AI to help you with this. So, real world example from myself. When I started not being cutesy with like my podcast titles and my podcast descriptions, now I do have to give a shout out to my podcast mentor, Adam Shively, who preaches this day in and day out on Podcasting Business School. But there was a noticeable, like, when I'm looking at my data, you can clearly tell when I was not focused on SEO and then when I started focusing on SEO, because I started getting a lot more reach and a lot more downloads on my podcast when I adjusted things to the keywords that my content needed to be found for and found with. So that was one of the biggest wins, and that's like, it was a game changer for me because I clearly was able to see the power in SEO. It's going to work a little bit differently, and this is also why I want you to be using some AI to help with this, because how you are found on a blog is going to be different than how you're found on YouTube. So definitely use like some of the AI GPTs to help you with this. I think like as a most basic formula for SEO, thinking again to those 6 W's, like, how would your client ask the question? Because that's really what people are asking. Like, they're asking for like information. Like I mentioned that family travel in Antarctica. When is the best time for a family to travel in Antarctica? That is going to be quickly found, because that's another part of this SEO, which I think I'm getting ahead of myself on if I'm looking at my notes. So maybe, hold on. I'm just looking at my notes. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but actually, you know what? No, we're here. I am somewhat getting ahead of myself. It's that longer form keywords are going to work better than just shorter keywords. And this is just in anything right now. So I could have just looked for family travel, and I could have gotten a lot of different types of family travel. But me looking specifically for family travel in Antarctica got hyper specific on the type of content that I wanted. And I'm sure not a lot of people are talking about family travel to Antarctica. That might be a little bit too niche out there. It might be like family river cruising or something like that. Might be a little bit more broad. But doing those longer keywords, so instead of just doing family travel to Antarctica, instead of putting solo travel, put luxury cruises for solo travelers. That helps you even more be found by the right types of people, because that's what that's what they're Googling. They probably went into Google to Google solo travel and then quickly found out, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. Like, I do not want to do a solo travel backpacking trip. Like, I would never want to do that. Why is it? No, I want to go on a cruise. And then they're probably finding options for cruises. And they're like, I don't want this cruise line. I want this cruise line. So then they finally figure out I should be searching for luxury cruises for solo travelers. And then if you wrote an article on that, your article should be one of the first ones to pop up. Or your video should be one of the first ones to pop up, because you have gotten hyper specific so that when a person gets to that piece of content, they're like, oh my gosh, this person just saved my life. They saved me hours. They're going to want to work with you because of that. So really thinking, what is your client going to be putting in that search box? Because they're not going to be looking for like sultry singles soirees. Like, it's cutesy. It kind of gets the whole point of solo single travelers and all that. But those aren't the words that they're using. They're using very basic terms and putting them together. So that is what you want to be putting in terms of like, these are going into your titles, these are going into your headlines, you're infusing them with keywords. And when I say infusing them too, it's not that you're writing this is an article about luxury cruising for solo travelers. Luxury cruising for solo travelers is wonderful. Luxury cruising for solo travelers is a little bit cost effective. It's not supposed to be every other word. Like, you're max probably using 5, maybe 6 times within an article. And that's within headlines. That's within like your title. You're not supposed to like beef it up, because that will also go against search engine parameters. They don't want you keyword stuffing. That will get you a ding with search engines like Google and Bing. So you have to be very selective and strategic. And strategic also means that you're using these keywords where it really matters. The URL, the title, the headings again. So think about that when you're thinking about keywords. The searchable keywords. Keyword rich descriptions, titles, alt text. So that's another place that search engine optimization gets missed, is when you're adding images or videos to things like blog posts, that you're missing the alternative text, the alt text, because you can infuse that with keywords as well, and that can also boost the likelihood of your ability to be found on search engines. So that's another like cool insider tip for you as well. When we're thinking specifically on social media, I know that hashtags were the thing. I loved hashtags personally. I was able to find things like Orlando brand photographer because I looked up that hashtags. Hashtags aren't as important though, because the SEO is improving, that they're using more keywords. They're trying to, like, when you search for luxury cruises for solo travelers, you're going to get a lot of different content that probably has those keywords infused as opposed to the captions. So if you've kind of been dreading about like hashtag strategy, I'm here to let you know you can kind of like let go of that one a little bit and really just focus on making sure that your captions have the keywords that you want to be found for. Similarly, alt text and having searchable descriptions are also very important for social media SEO. And then those longer form keywords, I kind of, again, jumped the gun on that, but LinkedIn and Pinterest love that kind of stuff. Speaking of Pinterest, that is its own search engine. So if you are having like videos and blog posts and even like podcast episodes, because part of me improving my podcast SEO is getting found like through YouTube and getting found on things like Pinterest by making blog posts for the podcasts. That's another way for your searchability to be improved, is if you're adding your content into Pinterest, because I know a lot of people, like, that's probably one of the top areas that people are looking for in Pinterest is travel inspiration. So you should also be using this. Now, I'm throwing a lot of different ideas at you. I want you to think back on our first episode where we're talking about the blueprint. Start with one thing, get really great at doing that one thing, and then add different things to your strategy. I do not want you to be overwhelmed. Again, we talked about overwhelmed in the last episode 2 of this series. I need you to like give yourself grace. These are all probably going to be really great ideas. I'm sure every one of these will help you out. You don't have the time, you don't have the expertise for this. So do the things that are going to be the simplest and most implementable for you. Because I'm not currently doing Pinterest. Do I think Pinterest is a great idea? I sure do. That's probably coming down maybe later this year or next year. I need to get better at doing other things first. So that is why it is not at the top of my bar too. You can also figure out kind of like what's working, what's not for you if you're using different analytics. So if you're going to YouTube, if you're going to Google, you'll be able to see like how people are finding your content. And you can lean into that, whether it's keywords, whether it's a certain type of content, especially if you're doing blog posts, you can link out to different ones of your blog posts that are related to this blog posts, and that can help people stay on your website even longer. That just helps you out. Like if somebody is staying on your website for a long amount of time, that just increases the likelihood of them wanting to work with you. It's not a guarantee, of course, nothing's a guarantee, but it's a good indicator for you. So definitely use Google Search Console. You can use Google Search Analytics, or Google Search Console, Google Analytics. YouTube also has like search trends. I know TikTok has search trends also, so that you can figure out like what are people. I feel like almost all of the social medias now have some way for if you're creating content on those platforms to figure out what's kind of working. And then also, remember last time we were talking about timeliness about things. So also what's working now and how you can connect that to your content as well. So that'll be really helpful. So that's kind of like a crash course on SEO for your travel content. I want to move on to collaborations and why I feel like this is a superpower. I wish more people had talked about this, because it's one thing for you to create relationships, create referral partners. It's another for you to be able to use each other's communities, each other's audiences to really elevate and help out each other. And I say help out each other because I don't want it to be that you're not doing your part as well. Like, you need to be creating really great content that supports your business, that garners you an audience of your own, so that there is value in these collaborations for the other person too. Remember, I'm a big proponent too of like, it's not just about you. We've got to consider the other person as well. So I would say that, I was in the last segment, I was talking about like hashtags not being important. I feel like collaborations are more powerful than hashtags now. Like, I feel I have gotten so much more out of collaborations than I have ever gotten out of hashtags. Ever. So hashtags, they can be valuable. They can be beneficial for you. I mentioned the example of Orlando brand photographer. But if we're thinking about FastPass, this gets you the FastPass a little bit. If you're doing a collaboration, because you're getting exposure to a new audience, new clientele that are already semi-warmed up for you because they know the person on the other platform, on the other end. And this is why I think collaborations work better. This can be like a collaboration. I mean, it can be as simple as like just going live on somebody else's social media account. This can be, I do a lot of collaborations on this platform. You know that I have a lot of guest speakers here on the podcast. I will also have a ton of guest speakers on all the different events that I put on throughout the year. So that helps give them exposure to my audience. And then I also get exposure to their audience. So guesting on podcasts, Instagram, TikTok lives. You can also go live on YouTube or LinkedIn. I think it's easier if you use something like a StreamYard to do that. But those types of things have done a lot. Like, not only get my content in front of other people, but have my email list grow because of that exposure. This can also be like guest speaking opportunities. So there are like so many different organizations that really want new and fresh content. It's not just media people. So I think of Rotary. Rotary is one that is always looking for guest speakers. So if you wanted to speak on a travel related subject first, you should be a member of your local Rotary. And then you should also see if you can pitch yourself to like guest speak on any travel topic it is that you're an expert in. So it's not just that I'm saying you should go out and do these collaborations. How are we going to find these types of collaborations? I would look immediately to either local entrepreneurs or digital entrepreneurs that you have some sort of affinity for. Like, how can you make a collaboration work with each other? Could you do it within the travel industry also? Yes, but I would also make sure that you have some sort of complementary. So like, you would probably partner with a supplier partner or tour operator as a travel advisor. You may not partner with a travel advisor per se. I'm sure that you can come up with a creative way, though, where multiple travel advisors can create something like that. I think there's a lot more nuance when it comes to that. So I think the easiest thing is going to be, what are some other businesses that people use or patron when they think about travel? And how can you kind of like collaborate on something, whether that's like a webinar, speaking, live, maybe that's even doing like a guest blog post, like you write a post for their blog and they write one for yours. So when it comes to guest speaking and podcasting, and I do want to talk about podcast guesting a little bit more, so we'll just get a little snippet on here. This, I feel, is going to be huge because I think podcasting is definitely a more personal way of getting to know a person and an audience than a YouTube video might be or a blog post might be, because you're probably doing something personal right now. I know I listen to podcasts in the shower all the time, or when I'm cooking or preparing food, or if I'm driving. So that's also one of the benefits of podcasting, is that I can take it around with me if I'm doing multiple things. I know I talked about habit stacking recently. So that's kind of like how you can stack multiple habits. So what are some of the podcasts that you love listening to that might be like local to you, or maybe like you're listening to crime podcasts? So how can like you relate a crime podcast to travel? Maybe it is in the special needs group. So you are probably listening to like some special needs podcasts. How can you teach people about traveling with these types of special needs by being a guest on somebody else's podcast? Because again, these guest speaking opportunities are amazing, but the value is for you to share your insights and not necessarily promoting your business. You promote your business through the insights that you share. So I also don't want you to be like, my agency does this, my agency does that. Like, you need to be bringing that expert authority that you have. You have to be offering these unique insights and unique angles that people can't just get when they Google somewhere. This can also be some sort of collaboration. And this is where I think it might be helpful, like if you're thinking about collaborating with another agency, is doing something like a virtual event or creating YouTube content. Like maybe you both are working on a group trip together and you're trying to sell the group trip together. That would be helpful. If you're not selling, maybe it's somebody specializes in theme park trips for older adults or older kids, where somebody specializes in theme park trips for younger kids, and you can partner up that way and divvy up the leads from there that way as well. So that's some ideas when it comes to like live collaborations, Instagram Live, audio events, YouTube content. There's also that co-branded content. So I kind of talked about these joint blog posts. There's these email swaps. Like maybe it's not necessarily that you're having an ad in your weekly emails, but you're saying like, hey, I just met up with this and I think that this is a really great. So I think I always go to pets. I don't have any pets, but I always think about that. Could you swap like a little snippet and like promote a pet boarding area, and then the pet boarding area can promote you for their next trip or for their next vacation or travel instance, and doing it that way? Because again, like these getting on other people's audiences is not, and I would say should not be travel focused. It should be focused on the needs of what your client has. So like you have to be pretty creative in this area. And I know that you can be really creative thinking about these types of things. Like you can even do like a collaboration when it comes to a social media post, because I know Instagram will allow you to do that. I believe Facebook does that too, where you can like collaborate on a post and it'll show both of your names. So if somebody's like, oh, I don't know that name, they can go to your profile or the other person's profile to find you and like just search and binge watch all of your content as well. So those are a couple ways that you can find collaborations. It's also through, it doesn't necessarily have to be like through a formal method, kind of like one of those. If you're engaging in other people's communities, this is LinkedIn discussions, my favorite. That's a way for you to collaborate. Forums, this can be Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups as well, or these can be paid communities. If you're interacting, like really the more active that you are, the more exposure that you're going to get. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your platform. I've got to say this too, because, you know, we talked about etiquette at the end of last year. I had that etiquette episode. Post and talk about things where it's appropriate. Sometimes, a lot of the times, you're not allowed to like be self-promotional. But if you're giving tips and tricks on things, that's going to get you to be seen as an expert, which means that people are going to want to check out your profile and learn a little bit more about you because you've just helped them out with something. So answering questions, giving that insider information really helps boost that expert authority that you have. So, are there any Facebook groups that you're currently in right now that might be related to a hobby that you love, a singer that you love, a local business that you love, that you can kind of be a little bit more active and show your face over there? So I want you to think about this, and this is like, I want you to challenge you to this. I know search engine optimization is really great, but what kind of collaboration can you work on this week? Is this like a formal collaboration? Do you want to like do a live with somebody else? Let me know. Send me a message, because I really want to hear about this, and I want to hear how creative that you're getting. The more creative I feel, the more intriguing. But we're not done there. So we've talked about SEO and collaborations. Now I want to talk a little bit about that distribution, because it's not just like, ooh, did some content, there we go. So we've got like the natural, the organic way of being found, which is that search engine optimization. Then we've got a little bit, I wouldn't say it's not inorganic, but there's more effort when you've done a collaboration. What are some other ways? Well, you've got to talk about it. It really comes down to that you've got to talk about it. One of the really easy ways to get more eyeballs on your piece of content is if you're talking about the same thing multiple times, which is where repurposing really is helpful. It is also being able to share it in different mediums. So, you know, I said I publish the podcast. You're seeing it being distributed on your podcast platform. I make sure that the podcast is available on multiple platforms so that it's available to as many people as possible. But then I also promote it without promoting it by writing a LinkedIn newsletter. It's really great to repurpose that as a different form of long form content because it helps build my authority on that platform. So someone that maybe doesn't listen to the podcast can still get access to the really great content that I have. And somebody that does listen to the podcast, it's beneficial for them to read the LinkedIn newsletter because it's formatted in a different way. So, and this is like kind of the benefit of where I say like you need to be telling people the same thing over and over again, because I may have said something, but then they read it differently and it clicks differently for that person. So again, that's really where the maximum impact is when it comes to sharing the pieces of content that you're putting out there as well. You may have created a long form YouTube video. Why don't you repurpose that or create like a little snippet for YouTube Shorts? Again, so that you have maximum impact of that piece of content. I always love to say too, your email list. Your email list is going to be a huge tool in that content distribution, because if you're not directly talking about a new piece of content that you've put out, at the very least, seeing your name in their inbox is going to push you top of mind again, and they're going to get curious. They're going to either open the email, they're going to check you out on social media to see what you've been up to, because again, remember I said we're all nosy. We want to be in everybody's business. So if you're at the top of people's lists, you're not only going to be physically on the top of someone's email list, but you're going to be top of mind when somebody's getting ready to plan that next trip. And then boosting engagement. There's all sorts of ways that even posts that you have created, I know that you can do this on Meta, on Instagram and Facebook, and repurpose content that maybe didn't pack a punch when it was originally published, but it's packing a punch now. Because sometimes timing is of the essence, and we don't get it right the first time, but the next time. I've seen so many people that have also they'll just republish the same content twice. And I've heard this too. I've been thinking about maybe trying it on the podcast, where some of the older episodes I republish, but I haven't gotten the chutzpah to do it just yet. So maybe. Also just cross-promoting it wherever, just talking about those content pieces. This is also what's helpful about focusing on that macro content, because you can create an Instagram story and keep talking about the podcast episode without technically having to create a whole new podcast episode. You're just talking about the different facets of it. Also, encouraging people to share the type of content that you have can be really beneficial, because again, it gets it in front of other people's faces that don't typically or may not typically be following you again. So this one was a little bit of a loaded episode. Lots of tangible takeaways here for you. So really, I want to hear from you, especially about the collaborations piece. What are you going to do to get your content out to multiple people that may not know about you already? What was a big aha from here? What are you going to start doing from this one to get your content seen to more people? Because we don't want your content to be forgotten, because you have spent a lot of time creating it. All right. I will see you here next week for episode 4. Everybody, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.